Right, I think, are we ready to kick off?
Just about to take over to 7, Chairman. So yeah, whenever you're happy to go.
Yep. Anyone you are.
Yeah, okay. Let's start. Good evening, members. Good evening, officers. Welcome to this evening's overview and scrutiny meeting. And good evening to any members of the public who may be watching us on the YouTube broadcast. Item 1 for this evening's meeting is apologies for absence.
Just the one, Chairman, from Councillor Kay, and we have Councillor Ward Booth here as substitute. Can't see Sophie Bell, so she's absent from the meeting, I think, at the moment. Can't see her.
Okay, she may be joining us later on. She may have internet issues or. Wonderful, thank you. Item 2, minutes of the 16th of June 2020 meeting. I don't know if...
Sorry, Chairman, we've got a blue hand from Councillors Hollybon and Goldsby.
Oh, right, sorry. Diane?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I just want to raise a point on the minutes before we approve them on page 33, where I raised a question about the Centre for Public Scrutiny CFPS report. That surely must be in by now. I'd like confirmation of that. And then also, if that is the case, could we have it at our next meeting, please?
Yeah, Lorraine, did you want to comment?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I was going to mention it a bit later on in the work programme. We have received the draft report. We haven't received the final report yet, and the Chief Executive and Leader have already commented on the report. The final report will come out shortly. But the clear thread in the draft report was that of the need to hold the executive to account rather than officers. So there is going to be a final report, and we'll get this to you as soon as we possibly can.
Happy with that answer, Diane?
Yes, thank you very much, Lorraine. But if it's already been in, and it sounds as though the CEO and the leader have already looked at it and commented on it.
Yes.
Well, that's fine, but surely we should see both versions, the original one and the amended version.
Well, all I can say, Councillor Hollybon, I note your comments. I'll mention that back to the monitoring officer.
Thank you very much, Lorraine.
Okay.
Miney.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just going to propose that we should accept the minutes of the last meeting.
Okay,
thank you.
Second for that, please.
Is that seconded? Ian Devonshire.
Yep.
Could I have a quick show of hands? All those in favour? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Item 3, Chairman's announcements. Just to ask members if they can. So good evening, Alex Curtis has just joined us. If members do wish to grab my attention, if you can use the blue hand facility. It will make it easier for me. If you can't and you do want to wave at me, then please do so, but it's very small boxes with so many of us, so I may struggle to see you, whereas at least I have 2 officers from Democratic Services to pull me up if I don't see the blue hands. So if you could use the blue hands, that'd be great. And for members of the public, if there is any votes, it will be done electronically, and Democratic Services will be able to see the way that people vote. We'll be voting with the green yes or the red no. Other than that, I don't think there's any other chairman's announcements. Do we have any declarations of interest? I can't see any, in which case, thank you very much. So we move on to item 5, enhancing the council's working relationship with registered providers, and I believe it's Jonathan Gill that's going to be presenting this. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Yes, yes, and I'm happy to introduce this report that you have in front of you, which is giving the recommendations that have stemmed from the Task and Finish group, the Social Housing Task and Finish group, we have also in the meeting today Helen George, who's our new Housing Development and Strategy Manager, whose role will be to take forward many of these recommendations if they are subsequently adopted by executive. So to introduce the paper, as you will probably recall, in November last year, the committee decided to establish a Social Housing Task and Finish group to investigate the working arrangements between the council and registered providers, often that you'll think of as housing associations in this context. They're essentially the same thing, but registered providers is the official term. And so to look at how those working relationships and working arrangements between the council and registered providers could be enhanced from a, by and large, good starting point, but enhanced for the benefit of tenants and those seeking affordable housing here in East Herts. Councillors John Wiley, Norma Simons, Mary Brady and Miney Goldspink served on that Task and Finish group and devoted considerable time and energy to the task. And that was I and members of the housing team supported members, and we noticed the hard work put in by those members. Much ground was covered in a focus group with tenants drawn from both Network Homes and Clarion Housing, the two largest registered providers in our district. And there were also meetings with senior officers from those two RPs, Network and Clarion. You will note that appended to the report, there are the detailed notes that were taken of those meetings and focus group, which I'm sure the members will have had a chance to review. I think what you'll see from that a lot of detail, a very rich vein and source of information was elicited by the Task and Finish group members. Some of those points are very specific to Network or to Clarion, and so those very specific to those associations will be followed up and are being followed up by the housing team. But of course, the aim of that Task and Finish group was to consider arrangements with all registered providers, and hence the report in front of you presents a series of detailed recommendations for improved joint working. The report then goes on to recommend are presented by the Open Scrutiny Committee to the executive for adoption, and then subsequently, if adopted by executive, for implementation by officers of the Housing Service and other colleagues across the council. The four joint recommendations are listed for you at paragraph 2.6 in the report. I mean, I won't go through them word for word, but in summary, recommendation 1 is, and that has a couple of kind of constituent sub-recommendations, if you like, a bit more detail. They are aimed at assisting elected members and RPs to be able to communicate directly and most effectively. So it includes getting a dedicated email address from all of the associations and a briefing note about how registered providers work to tackle antisocial behaviour, which is a theme that came up very often, and I know that is in many members' kind of post bags or email inboxes, I should say. So it's important to have that shared understanding. Recommendation 2 is concerned with further strengthening the dialogue between officers of the council and registered providers to promote high standards, including with regard to environmental sustainability. So the view would be to restart the housing forum meetings and to expand their remit to cover, as well as housing development issues that they typically have, housing management concerns as well. And there's a sub-recommendation about, as I say, maximising environmental sustainability outcomes of the associations. The third recommendation concerns the bidding for and the moving into housing association, I should say, registered provider properties, with specific points that came up about making the bidding process a wee bit easier, especially the lead-in for new build properties, and to have welcome visits when people move into a new home. Finally, recommendation 4 in front of you addresses a key finding that emerged during the discussion, that members of the Task and Finish group felt that housing officers should be involved at an earlier stage in the planning discussions, so planning discussions about new housing developments. So there's a recommendation there that housing and planning officers determine the best way to incorporate housing colleagues' in-depth understanding of the local housing need and local housing market at those crucial pre-application stages, and what's the best way to incorporate that input into some very detailed discussions. So to bring that together, the report in front of you, the recommendations at the head of the report recommend A, that Overview and Scrutiny Committee puts these recommendations that I've just summarised to the executive for adoption by the council. And then at B, that it's recommended to the executive that the executive member for neighbourhoods, it's Councillor Peter Boylan, works with me, the head of housing and health, and indeed obviously my colleagues in the team, to implement the proposals by the end of the coming financial year at the latest. And C, that should the executive approve those recommendations, that the executive member be invited to Overview and Scrutiny to report on progress towards the end of the coming financial year, which will be the deadline for implementation. Very happy to answer any questions or assist members in their discussion of the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, and thank you to Norma, Mynie and Mary for their hard work on the Task and Finish group. Certainly the meetings I attended, it was very informative. I can see your hands up, Mynie, but I was just going to ask Norma as chairman if she wanted to add anything to that, and then I will come to everyone with a blue hand up. Norma, do you want to add anything to it? You need to unmute.
Okay, yeah, thank you. It's an excellent report. Good reading and easy to read. So thank you for that, Jonathan. I was very pleased with it. I'm still not satisfied with the time it takes complaints to do with repairs with Clarion. And this is even before COVID. So they can't blame it on COVID. They don't tend to phone people back. One time the operatives turned up at midnight.
So Norma, you just really need to just, if we can, stick to the report. If there are any other issues.
Oh, right, okay. Sorry, John. You know what I'm like with housing. If you take out with
Jonathan especially, but it's just if you've got any comments on the report itself.
No, I've said it's an excellent report.
Right, thank you.
And I haven't got any other comments on it. And I want to thank my fellow councillors for working so hard on it as well in the interviewing process.
Thank you very much. Now I've got a couple of hands up now, but Mynie, you were first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I would like to echo Councillor Simon's comments to thank our officer, Mr. Jonathan Gill, for drawing all the threads together so nicely and presenting such a coherent and understandable report. So thank you very much for that. Yes, I fully support all the recommendations. Yeah, very strongly and with great enthusiasm, because I do think what is proposed will help us as councillors and maybe the housing associations to understand each other better. And yes, and they have given us good contact details, which I really do appreciate. And I think everyone will benefit, but especially I do hope that the tenants will benefit, because we will all understand how to work together a bit better. So I support the recommendations. I still have a little pernickety niggle, I'm afraid, about a tiny grumble about 5.1 under the risks in the report. I would just like, please, if the wording on that could be tidied up a little bit. I think it should be that the Scrutiny Committee will choose not to recommend any actions. That is the risk if we were to do that. But I think I'd like to ask, please, that just that wording could be tidied up Otherwise, I support everything very enthusiastically and very strongly. And I do hope that a lot of it can be implemented quite quickly. I don't think we need to wait till the end of 21-22. I think a lot of this can be done earlier. So I hope it will be implemented as soon as possible. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'm sure officers will have noted your minor sort of comment. Ian, you wanted to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm kind of, once again, I think it's an excellent report. I found it very easy to read. I think the members have done a fantastic job, and Jonathan has as well. On recommendation C, it says that the executive member will report back at the end of 21-22. That's, to me, seems a long, long way away. Can we not have an interim report before that? It seems, what is it, 18 months away, that time. We have an interim report from him, say sometime next year, please.
Yeah, well, I think one of the recommendations that we will be getting is that the executive members do come to see us more regularly. So I would be hoping that the executive member for that portfolio visits our committee on a regular basis, and we can be updated on, you know, as and when. James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just again, I'd like to echo it. It's an excellent report, and I think so thank you to everyone involved, officers and members alike. I think my question again is linked into both of the comments from Councillor Goldspink and Devonshire as well. I'm thinking specifically about the email addresses that can be set up and the sort of the quicker sort of events that we can have from this. If there was a way of tying in our executive member to that earlier report, then those sorts of things that could be actioned much more quickly than maybe some of the bigger reviews, at least we would be able to see then, and then our residents would also be able to see that this is something that is being actioned on an ongoing process. And so I think if we could actually, you know, request that to happen, I think that would be a really good thing to do.
Thank you. I mean, I don't know if members would therefore like recommendation C to say that should the executive approve the overview and scrutiny committee's recommended actions, the executive member for neighbourhoods be invited to report on progress on a regular basis. Does everyone sort of seems quite happy with that one? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Alex, I see you've got a blue hand up.
Well, I think the point that's already been raised that is an important one is how regular is regular. I think that needs to have a defined sort of, you know, do we need it to be, say, 6 months or 3 or quarterly? I think that we need to come to an agreement on that. I don't know what other members think, but that's something I think we should do.
I mean, that's a fair comment. At the end of the day, it can be as regular as we want it to be. I mean, it's our agenda. We can put something on the agenda and we can ask the executive member to attend to discuss whatever issue we want. My fear with putting it, say, every 6 months is that we may actually have a very heavy agenda in 6 months' time, and we may find that we don't do justice to everything else. So I'd be happy for officers and members to decide at which meetings they wanted the executive members to come to. I can see you want to come back, Alex. But
yeah, I think that's true about the need to have not have cluttered agendas. So perhaps it would be prudent to request an update by email every so often, say every 6 months, to be circulated to members of the committee, and then content can be added to the agenda based on what we receive from that as and when we think is appropriate. So that might be a good compromise on that.
yeah, no, I think that's fair comment, and I'm sure that we can do it outside of the recommendation. We can be asking for a regular email update, and I'm sure Jonathan will make sure that that is facilitated along with the executive member. Mari.
Yes, I just wondered how long they feel this is going to take. They've done quite a lot of the work on the task and finish group. How much extra has got to be actually worked through before it can be finalised?
Jonathan, do you want to answer that one?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, without kind of preempting members here on that task and finish, I believe my understanding is that it has reached the finish stage of that, and these are those recommendations. Then I think the next stage, I guess, well, I know really is that on the adoption or on the presentation of this then to the executive, and it can go to the next executive, or should those recommendations then be approved by the executive, part of that will be then a timetable of implementing those recommendations in there. Some of them, and as I think as colleagues, as members of your scrutiny have spoken, have said, that some of those are quicker wins, if you like, than some of those other ones. And so within that timetable of implementation, some of those will be far sooner than others. And so if the chairman wishes to make a request to the executive member for more regular updates, whether in person or email or whichever works for the committee, then I rather suspect then that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee can kind of see in almost like more in real time, rather than waiting to the end of the implementation period later next year. You can see it as it goes along, that almost like ticking off that work is happening on them, and that would be that would seem an appropriate way to proceed.
Yeah, I can see Mary's nodding, so I'm taking that as she's happy. Are there any other blue hands? I cannot see any, in which case can I take members to page 37, where there are the 3 recommendations, A, B and C, and A has the what we would call sub recommendations 1, 2, 3 and 4.
Sorry, Chairman. Sorry to interject there. Councillor Curtis got his hand up again.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. When you came back on my final point again, it was, Chairman, you said we would receive regular emailed updates, but again on this report on the progress of the implementation of all of this, but again there was no sort of actual time for that. So should I propose that we have at least a regular bit there, is at least every 6 months members of the committee will receive an email update?
I don't know what members, I mean, I was just about to amend recommendation C, but I don't know what members feel. My personal view would be that Jonathan is aware of what we want, and I'm not sure it needs to be a recommendation. It will certainly be minuted, and I'm sure members will remember the minutes, and we can certainly ask on a regular basis. Minor, you wanted to come back?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Why do we not propose that the executive member should report back to us within the next 12 months, and then they can all get on with the work, but there is some flexibility as to when we can have the official report, which could be at our convenience according to our work programme, and also at the convenience of the executive member. So I would just like the wording to be changed that he should report within the next 12 months.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with that. I don't see any blue hands of any objections. So therefore, the 3 recommendations would be A, which refers to the other 1, 2, 3 and 4, B, which stands, and C, that should the executive approve, etc. The executive member for neighbourhoods be invited to report on progress within the next 12 months to the committee.
Chairman, can we just have a seconder for that from Ryan Goldsmith, please? So,
James, I think you beat Ian by a second, but I'm guessing everyone's happy. If anyone's unhappy, can they put a blue hand up? If not, I'll take it that everybody is happy. Yeah, I take that as unanimous. I don't know, but yeah, I think that's unanimous. Again, thank you officers and members for the hard work put in. I think it certainly is a very important topic that we discussed. Item 6, the next one, and I believe that is council tax reduction scheme, and I think Graham, you're going to be leading on that one. I can find you on all these small screens. Oh, there you are. Yeah.
Good evening, Councillor Wiley. I'm not leading on it. It will be Teresa Mortimer because it's to do with the benefit side. So I'll pass it over to her if I may.
All right.
I'm here to support her.
All right. Hello, Teresa.
Good evening, Chairman. Thank you very much. I'm bringing this report, which is a yearly regular report that we have to bring. I ask that the ONS committee consider approval for the council tax support scheme for 21-22. We have operated a local support scheme since April 2013, following changes introduced by the Local Government Finance Bill to replace council tax benefit. Each year, we have to validate that by bringing it to committee, full council for approval before the 11th of March in the preceding financial year. And just a little bit of background, since its introduction in 2013, various changes have been considered, but the scheme has remained the same and it's for the working age caseload within council tax support. The Appendix A that's with the report provides detail of the history of the scheme. We previously considered an income banded scheme where the aim was to find a more simplified scheme, as well as mitigating the impact of changes to caseloads for our customers. Testing was carried out following some of these considerations, but it was proven that the banded scheme wasn't viable with regards to the modelling, and it didn't produce the desired results that we were looking for. We, in conjunction with that, we have actually automated quite a lot of our processes with regards to universal credit, which takes the vast majority of the changes for changes in circumstances for council tax support customers. And we have currently automated 71% of our current processes with regards to that. The current situation with COVID the impacts to the economy is uncertain at the present time for our residents. And in the report, it mentions that with the changes to the furlough scheme and changes for customers with regards to the uncertainty about employment and income, we propose that the report recommends that the current position with regards to council tax remains the same for the new financial year, that we would come back maybe early next year with a possible change after further consideration. So we're actually seeking for committee to support the use of the current scheme into 21-22. And I'm happy to take any questions from the detailed report that you've all received.
Thank you very much. Remember, I can see a couple of blue hands up. So in the order that they appear, so there's no favouritism, David first and then Mynie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for that report, very useful. So I'm not sure if I missed it there, but you said you were looking to possibly bring some changes next year. I'm not sure, did you mention the nature of the changes you were looking to bring in?
No, sorry, I can maybe confused you a little there. We had considered making changes, but once we had looked at the scheme itself, the actual changes wouldn't have been beneficial really to residents. So we decided that the current scheme that we have, which is for working age customers, which is the 91.5% rebate, we would like to remain with the current scheme that we've had in operation for the past 8 years.
So you were thinking of lowering that number, were you?
No. Some councils, in the report, it will detail that some councils have changed to a banded scheme, which we feel is a bit more complicated than the current scheme, and it wouldn't bring any benefit to or any beneficial results to our residents. So therefore, we've decided that we should remain with the current scheme.
What about beneficial results to the council?
If we were to go to if we were to look at another scheme, it would cost us money. We would have to go out to full consultation to the public. We then have to also fund changes to the software, which again would be an added cost to the council. And at this time, we don't feel that warrants any change. It wouldn't bring any beneficial benefits to the council as a whole.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me, Norma, I did see you wave, but Mayne was up before you, so I will come. I can see you, you're on the list. Mayne's next.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got two comments. Firstly, though, I would like to ask an idiot's question, please. Previously, the council was reimbursed by the government for the cost of these tax reduction support schemes. But now that the revenue support grant has withered away to nothing, does the council get any reimbursement for the cost of this scheme? And then after the answer to that, can I make a comment about the report? Thank you.
No, we don't get any direct funding for the scheme. You're right that it's in the revenue support grant, but it is difficult to strip that out of the grant that we get for other things. So no, we don't get any direct funding.
Oh, thank you. And may I continue, Chairman?
Yes.
It's about universal credit, and this is such a minefield, and it's so complicated. I mean, this is one of the reasons why it's very difficult for the council to know who is eligible for reductions and who's not, because universal credit varies according to whether people get work for a little while and then they lose the job, then they go back again, and each time that happens, their claim for universal credit changes, and then when they get back to universal credit, there's a time lag before they get any benefit. So it's a really complicated procedure, and I understand that's one of the reasons why we were thinking, as other councils have done, to have the banding, so that even if people's income varied or their entitlement to universal credit varies a little bit from time to time, there still remains within a band. So I understand that's why that you were looking at that. But coming on from that, it does say, and I'm sure this is right, that people on universal credit believe that their housing benefit will automatically be paid for, because they were told universal credit puts together all benefits. Well, it doesn't include housing benefit. So is there some way that we could help people to know that they have to apply separately for the council tax support and for housing benefit? Is there anything which the council can do to help with that? I don't know who could answer that.
I can answer that.
Yes, thank you.
Housing benefit in the main for customers is actually paid with universal credit. It's paid as a part of the universal credit payment in the majority of cases. There are some exceptions to that rule, but it is imperative that when the customer claims universal credit, they tell the DWP at the point that they are claiming that they have housing costs. So that then becomes part of the calculation that DWP, Department of Works and Pensions, calculates their rent. The rent is not then paid to the landlord, it's paid directly to the customer, and it's up to then the customer to pay the rent from their universal credit payment. With regards to council tax support, No, it's not part of the universal credit. However, we work very closely with our colleagues in the DWP. And one of the questions that our customer is asked at the point at which they claim universal credit is, are they going to claim council tax support? And it's at that point that they are then advised that they have to claim directly with the council. That means an online claim at the moment. But yes, it depends on, it relies, I beg your pardon, it relies on the DWP alerting the customer to claim at the right time.
That answer your question, Miney?
Well, yes, thank you very much. It just reinforces my idea and understanding that the whole process is really, really complicated and very difficult for people. I don't know what we can do about simplifying it, but I'm glad that you understand it. But I still wonder, is there some way that we could help everybody who's trying to claim to understand it? But maybe you think that, well, you're doing your best and nothing more can be done. Anyway, thank you for the explanation.
Okay, thank you. We'll come to Norma and then we'll go back to the blue hand. So Norma, you need to unmute, Norma.
Okay. Hi, Teresa. Nice to see you again.
Hi, Norma.
Yes. Are you finding there's partly what Mayani has just asked? Are you finding that people still are not understanding that their council tax is not in with the UC? Because I go to the job centre occasionally, although it's closed at the moment, or speak on the phone for people who can't manage. And the job centre always tells them that their council tax is not part of the universal credit. But for some reason, they seem to be deaf at that point. Are you finding there's more people are struggling because of it, or has it got better?
I do think people do struggle with it, because the old regime was that, as you well know, that people claimed housing benefit and council tax support, or council tax benefit as it was, at the same time. People do struggle with it, but as I said, we are working, tirelessly with our colleagues in DWP to get them to publicise it for us, if you like. We also work closely with other agencies, with the CAB as well, to ensure that people are getting the right message out there. I'm happy to take on any recommendations or anything that could help us to further that quest. Again, looking back to Jonathan's other report, we also work closely with our housing providers to ensure that they're also speaking with tenants at the right time to make sure that they're claiming everything that they need to claim in the way of council tax support. Things have got better, but they could be much better.
Thank you.
Lovely, thanks, Teresa.
Now, James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, again, thank you very much for the reports. I do have to say, I do think it is prudent, probably given the challenges that everyone is facing at the moment, not to really make any wholesale changes or commit to any wholesale changes quite at the current time. But I think from what everyone's saying, I think this is something that there would be a huge range of views on. So the consultation, I think, at some point would definitely be appropriate on it. My question really is referring to paragraph 4.9, page 90 of the agenda pack. And I think it's more of a language thing, that it says that in relation to the St Albans model that is currently going on, it's phrased that this is an interesting scheme, which makes me sort of feel that maybe this might be something that is being looked into, or might be looked into slightly further. And I'm just wondering, is there any more information on that scheme? What makes it an interesting one that is following?
Maybe they're not the right choice of words, but yes, the scheme itself is a banded scheme, and it does look at, I think it's to mitigate the amount of changes because of universal credit. So it looks at to reduce the number of variations within those bands, and it's income bands. So if someone had an income, 1 to 50, they would remain in that irrespective of the amount of change that goes on. It certainly is something that we were interested in, and it's certainly something that we would be looking at for the future. But at the moment, it is a lot of investment, I think is probably the right word, into it, time and money investment into changing it in such a radical way.
Okay, but it is something that might be looked into in the future.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. And Ian.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a point about the recommendation, really. Teresa said that she recommends we remain with the current scheme. If you look at the recommendation on page 77, it doesn't actually say that. It says we're going to explore further. So if we vote on the recommendation on page 77, I don't think we're actually agreeing with what Teresa has recommended to us.
No, I mean, that's a fair comment. I don't know if any of the officers want to comment.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding of it, and I'm sure Teresa will correct me if I'm wrong, but the recommendation under A on page 77 is about other options around the scheme. So I'm sure Teresa will correct me if I'm wrong. That's my understanding of it.
Yeah. Yeah, the recommendation is to remain with the current scheme. That's at 2.8. Seeks to support the current scheme for 21-22, and that moving forward into 22-23 and beyond, we will still look to possible changes for future years, but not for the coming year.
Right, so because it's a recommendation for overview and scrutiny rather than for the executive. So are you happy with that explanation, Ian?
Yeah, I am, as long as everybody's fully understanding what we're voting for, really. So if we vote for that recommendation, it doesn't actually say, well, I suppose it does further down, doesn't it? As long as we understand that we are voting to continue the current scheme.
Yeah, Miney.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I think we should be more explicit, and we should say that as a committee, we recommend to the executive that the council should continue with its present scheme for council tax reduction. I think we should actually recommend that we think we should continue with the present scheme.
Okay.
Right. I mean, Ian, you wanted to come back?
Chairman, can I add to that we stay with the present scheme at the moment, but we explore further in future years?
Yeah, I'm happy with that one. If officers are, if they've got, yeah. So the recommendation is that we continue with the current scheme, and officers investigate alternative schemes as and when they can and the schemes become available.
Yeah, well, that's been proposed by Councillor Goldsmith. Can we have a seconder, please?
Yes. Oh, Councillor Devonshire. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's about 3 or 4 hands up. So, again, if there's anyone who is against that recommendation, if they can put a red cross up. If not, I will take it as read. Yeah, I can't see any objections. So that recommendation goes forward. Item 7, policy for enforcing standards for private sector landlords. Is this Paul who's doing this?
Hello,
yeah,
it's me. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The Housing Act, Housing and Planning Act, sorry, allowed the council to have some new enforcement powers with regards to dealing with landlords and property agents. We need to have our own documented policy, though, with regards to that in order for it to be lawful. It allows it to be transparent and it allows consistency, particularly with regards to the civil penalties, which we'll briefly touch on. So this is a policy of 4 policies. So I've just referred to individual policies. So policy 1, starting on page 109, is looking at issuing civil penalties up to £30,000 per offence. It'll be an alternative to prosecution, and it would be the policy sets out how these would be used and how the fine, if you like, would be determined. This has been worked on across Herts and Beds, so there's consistency between the authorities. Policy 2 looks at rent repayment orders and allows us as the council, if the landlord is convicted or has committed specific offences, allows us to reclaim benefit for up to 12 months from when the offence has occurred, but it also allows the tenants to reclaim their rent if they've paid their rent. Policy 3 looks at banning orders. So a landlord or a property agent can be banned from letting out a property if they are convicted of a specific event. Policy 4 looks at landlord and property agents database. I know the report refers to rogue landlords. I think it sort of makes them all sound very lovable, doesn't it? But that's a debate I have with Jane, and we'll leave there. But the database allows us, particularly across county or cross boundaries, allows us with things like banning orders and stuff like that to know whether anyone has been banned. Currently, there is no national register, or we're not part of a national register for that. So this would be signing up and using that register. We've just finished a 10-week consultation. So we haven't really got all the results yet. That finished yesterday, but that will feed into the report to the exec. So Jane O'Brien is here tonight. She's our Senior Environmental Health Officer dealing with the residential side of environmental health. And so she, passing straight over, will be able to take any of your questions.
Thank you very much. I should have said to any officers, if your piece has gone and you wish to leave the meeting, please do so. Please don't feel that you have to stay for the whole meeting. We'd love to have you, but if you've got other things to do, please feel free. Thank you for that, Paul and Jane. Members' questions, Mynie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I have several questions and some comments, and I do my questions first. In the main report, I have a question about 2.5, another about 2.15. 2.5, the legislation requires the decision to use civil penalties as opposed to bottle law is decided on a case-by-case basis and is not set as a fixed fee. These policies will help ensure that the council uses them consistently and in a transparent way. So I'm confused, because if it's done on a case by case and there's not a fixed fee, how are these judgments done in a consistent and a transparent way? So that is my first question. The second one is on 2.15. This is a banning order offence at a time when they were a landlord or property agent, or where a person or organisations had 2 or more financial penalties. I'm not quite sure what it means, offence at a time where they were a landlord or property agent. So please, could I have some help with understanding that 2.5 and 2.15? Thank you.
Jane?
Thank you, Councillor. For 2.4, we're talking about the civil penalties. And basically, each time we get to the stage where we would maybe have been thinking about prosecution, each case will be very different. The situation of the landlord will be different, the situation of the tenant will be different. Excuse me, the matrix that is part of the pack, the second appendix, the big Excel spreadsheet, that allows us to take into account a series of factors in each case. So they include things like the culpability of the landlord. Did they know they were committing an offence? Have they done it before? How serious the offence was, how big an impact that could have had on the tenant, what the landlord's income is. So it's really a lot of the factors that would otherwise have been taken into account maybe by the magistrates in coming up with a penalty. So although each one is different, we have got an agreed matrix that allows us to calculate it, and where people can see that the way the penalty is being calculated. Does that help on that one?
Well, thank you slightly, but I'm still confused by the wording. So if it's I understand being decided on a case-by-case basis, that seems to me to be eminently sensible and very good to take all these things into account. But then the setting of the fee is judged according to the matrix. So why not say that is the penalty charge is decided on case-by-case basis and set according to the matrix? And if you said that, then I could understand that if you're using the matrix every time, you are being consistent. And if matrix is published, then it could be transparent. But I think just to say, decide case by case and not set as a fixed fee, that doesn't sound to me to be consistent. But if you were to change the wording and say you're using the matrix, then I would understand it.
I think that's something we can definitely take forward with the report to the executive and make that clearer. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. And then the other one was 215.
Yes.
The wording there is confused. It's a time where, it should be when, surely, when they were a landlord or property agent. So I don't. Yes, please could I have some explanation of that paragraph? Thank you.
Again, yes, I note the comment on the actual specific word. When is definitely a better word in that place, I think. A landlord, for us to actually make a banning order, to use this is rogue landlords and property agents. I suppose a landlord could have committed a banning order offence prior to ever having any properties and being a landlord. And for us to put the landlord on the database, they have to have committed the offence at a time when they actually were a landlord. So this is what this is trying, and this is what the legislation basically says. So we've got discretion to make entries. There are times when we have to make an entry to that register where somebody's actually committed a banning order offence and received a banning order. But we have discretion where an organisation has discretion to make it. I'm looking at this again now. I'm looking at my wording. Right. I believe the wording should be where an organisation has committed a banning order offence at a time where they were a landlord or property agent. No, sorry for my confusion. It is convicted, but not actually had a banning order. So we can choose not to apply for a banning order and not force them to give up all their rental properties, but still put them onto the database so that other authorities will be wary of that landlord. And so they do still have to have been convicted of a banning order offence, but it does have to have been at a time when they were a landlord and not an offence they committed prior to taking on residential properties. So
I think again, that's probably one of those areas that we want to just tighten up the wording on that before it goes to exec.
Yes, and my memory of it.
Chairman, if I may, just very briefly, if it helps members on that point, I think the wording we are proposing and the wording can seem slightly cumbersome because this is a very potentially litigious kind of area. If you are acting to ban a landlord or take, these are the kind of very the kind of serious end of the spectrum of actions, if you like. There is, clearly we need to have it entirely framed within the wording of the legislation itself, which is slightly cumbersome, but we do not want to deviate from that. We can obviously, and I think this discussion now is exceedingly helpful because I think it obviously in the kind of explanatory notes and advice and guidance that we put alongside it, we would want to make it crystal clear to the landlords and indeed to tenants, members, any observers and those wishing to advocate or be involved on it. When it comes to, I think Jane's quite right, when in the wording that we've used within what we're putting forward here, we've stuck very, very well to the word, to the legislative instruments and the guidance, so that we don't somehow trip ourselves up in when we then pass it. Well, we hope that it will go then through council and it gets adopted, that unfortunately, there is an industry of people and legal firms trying to kind of find loopholes when an authority has not enacted a piece of legislation correctly. So we need to just be very mindful of that. But I think it's a very good point, that exchange there, which I was listening to very carefully. I think it just underlines we need to make sure that the advice, the guidance, the support around it is perhaps in kind of more everyday terms so that everyone is clear. Thank you, Chair, for that, for allowing me that intervention. I hope that has helped the discussion a little.
Yeah, it certainly helped me. Mayoni, does that put your mind at rest?
Yes, well, thank you, Chairman. I'm a little happier now. I still find it quite difficult, but yes, I am happier. And then in a minute, I've got some comments on the policies themselves, but shall I let somebody else?
If I can come back to you, because there are a few other hands up and I will come back. So first of all, Holly.
Thank you. My first question was regarding the banning order. Is this something that's UK-wide or is it based on a particular district or county? So once you're banned, are you just banned in a district or a county or throughout the UK? My second question is regarding policy 4. How is the database used? Who has access to it? If it's just councils, does it not seem as though this information could be important for other people, such as letting agents, to know if these kind of people are operating potentially with other properties? And one last point, if I could, it just seemed a bit of a shame that we have this report now that doesn't include the consultation information in it. I appreciate that finished yesterday, but if that consultation had been started 2 or 3 weeks earlier, we would have had enough time to have had that included in our report for scrutiny, and that just seems a bit of a shame. But that was all. Thank you.
I don't know who wants to answer that one. Jane?
Yes. For your first point, the banning orders are UK-wide. So once a landlord has been banned, they have a ban for the UK. Yes. So that's across the board. On the database, it is a database that is being developed and is maintained by the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government. That's it. The original plan for the database was that it would be accessed only by local authorities. I understand that's more in line with a database that the trading standards run for estate agents along the similar lines. There is some looking at this at ministry level for whether the database should be accessed by a wider group of people. London certainly has their own database for something similar. But at the moment, the database we're talking about here is purely accessed by local authorities. And the final one, Jonathan, do you want to comment about the fact that the consultation information isn't included?
I think, I suppose, in a sense, look, it's we're up against a whole number of deadlines to try and get this through the process and alongside the various coronavirus elements. But I mean, I think it would be only right to take it on the chin that it's an entirely fair point that had we slightly got the timescales differently, then we could have shared those responses. I would hope that what we can do is take alongside the comments that are coming through tonight, take those alongside the comments that have come through the wider consultation and draw those together. If there were some very substantive points or maybe some clashes between what's raised tonight and what's coming through then they would be more substantive. We would probably want to start another bit of discussion with scrutiny members on that. I think as officers, sometimes we have to take it on the chin that timing wasn't our strong suit on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, and fair comment. Holly, you're happy with those answers?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. James.
Thank you, and again, thank you for the report, and thank you, Jonathan. I think that was really going to be my question, that if anything did substantially change on that, if we would then be able to see the reports again from that point. But I have also noticed, just for information, paragraph 6.1 on the consultation, it's a different date to the consultation mentioned earlier in the document. It's the 14th of September and it's the 12th on 6.1. And just the wording is slightly out on that. The sort of phrasing of it is slightly out. So it might just need tweaking if possible.
Okay, thank you very much. Miney, you wanted to come back. I see no more blue hands, so I'll come back to you. You've muted yourself, Miney.
Okay, can you hear me now? Yes.
Yes.
So thank you, Chairman. Yes, I have a question about the rent repayment thing. This is, where am I? Under policy 2, rent repayment, and it's just before determining whether to apply for a rent repayment officer. It does say who can apply for this rent repayment. It does say that the tenant could apply for it, and if the tenant can't manage to do that, the council could make the application on behalf of the tenant. My question about that is then, well, does that mean that the tenant will receive the money, or does the council receive the money in that case?
Answering that one, if the money was paid out of benefits, then the council will receive the money. Where the money was paid from the tenant's own money, not benefit money, then the tenant receives the money. And if it's a mixture, then there's a calculation to work out the split between the two. So where, for example, the housing benefit element of universal credit doesn't cover the full amount of rent, and the tenant has had to top it up, then the recovered money will be split between the council and the tenant.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. And then my final question is about banning orders. This comes under policy 3. I suppose it's a simpleton's question really, but what happens if somebody is banned from being from renting out properties? What happens to all the tenants? Are they immediately made homeless, or what happens to them once their landlord has been subjected to this banning order?
Once a banning order is in place, there is actually a period of time allowed for the landlord to basically put his affairs in order, potentially either to sell the properties on, which could be with sitting tenants, sorry, or to arrange for them to be managed more appropriately. But they would have to be completely hands-off in that situation. So we would, if the landlord is selling the properties and moving the tenants on first, basically evicting the tenants, then that's a case where we'd be working with our colleagues in housing options to see if they fulfill the requirements for us to have to help them with housing. Obviously, if they're about to become homeless, they move into that process for homelessness prevention and then relief if necessary. So that's where we are. And of course, this wouldn't just be for landlords who we've applied for a banning order for. Other authorities might have applied for a banning order for a landlord who happens to have property in our district, and would be caught up in that exact same situation there, where we would have to help the tenants to try and find themselves more suitable accommodation.
Thank you very much. Mine, are you happy with those answers?
Yes, thank you. It does seem to be a sad situation, but I suppose it's a very serious situation as well. So there aren't any winners really, but no, thank you for the explanation.
Thank you. And I cannot see any other blue hands, in which case if I can take members to page 99, where we have the two recommendations, one that we support the proposed new policy, and B, that suggested amendments, additions, deletions, and hopefully officers will have taken on board what our comments, criticisms, etc. were. So can I have a proposer for those two on page 99, those two recommendations, please?
As Ward Booth has hand up for.
Alistair, thank you. Is that seconded?
Yeah.
Miney, thank you. Again, unless I see any red nose, I will take it as read that that is agreed, and I see nobody objecting, so therefore that is passed. The next item is the Environmental Climate Change Forum update, item 8, and I'll be honest, I don't know who's actually going to be doing this one, so I need some help from officers.
Jonathan, I believe.
Jonathan's going to do it. Are you right? So Jonathan, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Yeah, more than happy to give a brief verbal update on this item, and of course to take any questions or any discussion that members have. So the Environmental and Climate Change Forum, as I know that you all know, was one of the recommendations from a task and finish group on this topic by Scrutiny, maybe about 18 months or so ago, and then it was incorporated, again, as I'm sure you're aware, into the Climate Change Declaration that was unanimously passed by Council in July last year, and it had a series of commitments, and one of those was to establish the forum and to use that as a consultative body. We held our first our inaugural meeting of that forum in January this year, and that was, it seems like a distant memory, it was a traditional face-to-face conference in Fletcher's Lee and Ware. A fantastic turnout and much ground covered on that. Unfortunately, as we know, the events that have taken place with COVID and everything has and again, there's no way of avoiding it. It has slightly taken attention in a different way, and obviously precludes really from having those large conferences like that. I am pleased, though, to say that we're getting back on track with a virtual conference via a video conferencing approach, and that's booked in for this coming Monday at 3 p.m. I understand that my colleagues in the team who are organising it have alerted those who wish to attend and invites and such like. If that hasn't been, and I hope that members here have been invited to that, if that's not the case, I can absolutely make sure there's an all-member invite out very early tomorrow morning. And again, I suppose in a sense, one of the, if you look at a kind of virtue out of necessity, it does mean that we can host a greater number of people there than meeting physically. That forum meeting will have two main focuses, and they're very, and in a sense, things are kind of getting a bit stored up. So of course there'll be the consultation on the sustainability supplementary planning document has just opened a week or so ago. So that's going to be a real strong and primary focus. But alongside that, and in some ways, I think perhaps more importantly, what we want to do, or what we will do, is be sharing the, at least in its kind of current form, the council's own action plan to meet the commitments that were made and very well, made and crafted as part of the climate change declaration. I think, again, I think it'd be fair to say that there's been a great deal of work continuing on those actions, but again, it's not an excuse, it's just there's been so many priorities through this challenging times with COVID, and a lot of the focus has been within the environmental health team, who have been slightly drawn into dealing with all that. We haven't really, we've missed a trick, if I can put it like that, in publicising what we're doing. Hence, we're very keen to cover that, as I say, at this forum meeting. If I may just give a little very headline detail on that, is that the action plan is broken down into three broad categories, those being the changes that we can make to our premises, how we manage our people, how we manage our services, so things that we, the council, can directly do. Then how we can use our regulatory powers to promote others to do things, and those regulatory powers, primarily planning powers, a lot of our licensing activity with taxis, for example. And then, of course, the whole big influencing and encouraging behaviour change. Much we can do there. It's my understanding that the committee it would like a full report on where we are, and that's absolutely, I completely understand that, and that's given the amount of effort that went in through that earlier task and finish group, that's what you would want. So David Thorogood, our environmental sustainability coordinator, and I are very happy to draw that report up and present that at your next Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 3rd of November, should members wish that in the work programme. So I suppose in almost like in summary, we now want to get right back into a regular pattern of those forum meetings. We have had this bit of a gap, lots happening behind the scenes, but we're not involving everyone as we really want to, probably by video conference for the foreseeable future for obvious reasons. And so we're hoping that there'll be the next one, we'll have another one this calendar year, November time, and we can get right back into the programme. I would just round off, if I may, that alongside this, East Herts Council have been really proactive proactive players, if you like, in the establishment this year of the Hertfordshire Climate Change and Sustainability Partnership, which is all 10 districts, the County Council and the Local Enterprise Partnership, for the obvious reason of wanting to be more than the sum of the parts, if you like. 4 priorities for that group: carbon reduction, of course, water sustainability, biodiversity and transport. And so David Thorogood and I can incorporate those wider priorities and actions that we're participating into regular updates to this committee, and I'm happy to bring that forward. As I say, Chairman, happy to take any questions on that if more details are required, or participate in a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I certainly think an update, a written update would certainly be beneficial, and it doesn't need to wait until the next meeting. We could have a written one just emailed to members in the meantime. Couple of hands up. James, first of all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Jonathan, for the update. I certainly hope that what I'm sort of about to say, I don't want it to reflect in any way on the work that I know you and officers have been doing behind the scenes. But I have to say, it's a little bit exasperating to hear. I absolutely understand the challenges that everyone has been facing, and I don't want to make light of any of those at all. But to know that there has been this action plan drafted and that it's been in place for a little while and it's been commented upon and requested at past council meetings, I believe, and this is the first time that we're hearing of it, that it's being shared at the forum on Monday. I think communication has been a bit of an issue on this, and I find it a little bit disappointing that perhaps the executive member for the environment hasn't been able to give us an update as well. So I appreciate that Lorraine, maybe, as you said, the report that is coming back, maybe about holding the executive to account a little bit more. And I feel it important that perhaps Councillor McAndrew would be able to be here to answer some questions as well about things that have been going on and the progress, because I do sort of feel that this has come as a slight surprise. I haven't checked my email today. I've been at work, and so I haven't had an invitation. I don't think I've certainly not heard about this forum that's happening on Monday. I may be the only person here that hasn't heard of it, so I appreciate that as well. But this is all just very sudden, and I wonder whether that's just because of getting back out of into the world of COVID. I understand, but I do feel that we need to be a little bit stronger on this moving forward, and to make sure that 2030 is not a long time away, considering everything that needs to be in place for that. And so I certainly, even if we can't go to the forum, which I may very well not be able to given work commitments, I think we need to see that action plan and get a written report on it and everything, because I think we need to make this a real priority moving forward. Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me that release.
Oh, thank you. And I think if officers can make sure that we send an email invite out to all members for the forum on Monday, so that they are aware of it. And I think officers will have taken on board your comments. Alex.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with Councillor Frecknell that it's regrettable the timescales involved in getting this to committee and out to the forum for their input, their comments. I've got a few questions. The first of which is what provision is being made for young people, including those of school age, to participate in the forum meetings? I know that the last forum meeting, the first one, took place during the day, and there were a number of complaints made on social media and otherwise by young people that wanted to be involved in that process that weren't able to participate in the forum. So that's my first question. My second question is with regard to the action plan itself. There's, by the sound of it, quite a few things in there in terms of stuff that we can be doing as a council and stuff that we can be asking others to do. Though I'm wondering what the times, what sort of timescales are allocated to all of these actions. Do we have sort of deadlines for when we expect these things to be done that we can follow up and chase up if needed? And do we have officers clearly assigned to work on individual bits of work there so that tasks don't get missed? I'm wondering how well that's all been thought out yet, because that's going to be very crucial if we are to get all of this done for, well, 2023 and, well, in time for 2030. So, yes, those are my two questions.
Okay, Jonathan, do you want to answer?
Thank you. Yes, yeah, very happy to. And let me take them just in the order that were taken. About young people, yeah, very good comment indeed. What we've got, we've responded because in the action plan itself, it specifically has an item about a schools-based climate change conference, and we started work on that earlier in the year, and then everything that's happened has happened. What we're, from our discussions with head teachers and thus far at the moment, is given the pressures on schools at the moment, it's all just such a challenging time on so many fronts. Obviously, climate change is such a major issue, and it'll be very much in the forefront of many people's minds, not least of which young people. But I think the schools are telling us that their focus is on trying to get children back into the classroom and social distancing and catching up and all sorts of things. they're kind of saying, we really want to do this, but we just need a bit of breathing space to do the kind of more kind of grand plans that we had. So that's definitely in the action plan. So hopefully we can get to that as soon as we can and really engage, because the young people of East Herts, if not nationally, are very much at the forefront of much of this. In terms of the second point that Councillor Curtis raised, I think is essentially saying about, are they smart targets in terms of timed and assigned to people and such like? They are, and I'm not trying to make excuses. I completely hear and take on board the frustration of members of this committee on this hasn't been visible. And to be honest with you, it's not an excuse. With so many moving parts at the moment, it's almost like we should have made this more visible. We haven't. I chair them, coordinate them. We have an action plan for sustainability. We have monthly meetings. We are updating it. It's all color coded. All the actions are smart. They are assigned to different officers from across the whole council. This is a very corporate endeavour, and they are timed in terms of the financial year that we anticipate them coming forward, and they're marching ahead. I think we just need we just need a forum to get that out to people. And I recall that Councillor Graham McAndrew, in response to a council question, maybe it was a member of the public's question at council last time, did say that we would be able to share it that the forum he felt was the forum, the next environmental and climate change forum would be that way to share the word about it. So that's what we're kind of working to. What was I going to say? So I think we've just got ourselves slightly out of sync on trying to get it out amongst everyone what we're doing. If I may just very quickly round off with what we are hoping from the forum meeting is that we that we share in the kind of spirit of absolutely transparency. These are the things that we have put into that action plan. A number of them are carbon costed. We know the efficiency in terms of carbon reduction that are attached to them, and we are genuinely asking for feedback, input. We see the action plan not as a set in stone, and publish it and put it on the shelf kind of thing. It's an ongoing piece of work, so it'll be a work in progress the whole time as a living action plan. So I'd very much hope that as many people can take part in that forum, but that's not the only chance to get involved. And let me kind of just talk with the executive member about a way of, involving members far more in that as well. We are timetabled to speak to one of the member information briefings in October, but of course there may be opportunities to involve the Opiate Scrutiny Committee in a far more detailed way and a more regular way as well.
Thank you for that. Alex, you've got your blue hand up again. Is this a
yes, just follow up back to what back to our response. Firstly, I thank you for your responses. I firstly just want to highlight that I completely appreciate what you've said about school schedules and the need to fit this around other things that schools are doing. Though we also have evenings as a council that we can schedule events either via Zoom or in person for young people to participate in. Alternatively, though I accept there are probably cost implications, there are Saturdays. So that should be something to be considered if you can't get something scheduled in school hours because the schools aren't able to cooperate due to the need for catch up with stuff that was missed in school at the end of last academic year. With regard to the your second set of responses, I think that all sounds encouraging, very encouraging actually. Though I'm wondering whether the Overview and Scrutiny Committee this committee will have regular sight of where we are of each of these items in the plan. Who's responsible for reviewing the plan in terms of progress and seeing what hasn't been done and what has been done, and making sure we're on track with that over the years ahead, because that seems like it was a very important task, quite a substantial one as well. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on how that process could work.
I think we've certainly, as a committee, we have asked for regular updates. I would hope that the reports that come to us in future will answer all those questions that you've got, and I'm sure Jonathan's taken on your comment with regards to the schools and timings, etc. So thank you for that.
Regular is not it's not a precise term. I don't know what that means. Does that mean that stuff can get sort of forgotten about on that plan? Do we get regular oversight of the whole plan and progress towards each of the items, or only some of the items? This all seems quite unclear to me in terms of how this will work. So I think that we do need to, at some point, either today or at a future meeting, work out more clearly what regular means and what information we will be receiving regularly and what will we be asked to review progress on regularly. But thank you.
By all means, bring that up at the next item and we can pencil in updates, but I understand where you're coming from. Myone and then Mari. Myone.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, in reply to what Councillor Curtis has just said, I thought at a previous meeting we had said we wanted to have a report on climate progress and environmental matters at every single meeting of overview and scrutiny. I thought we'd already decided that. My other point is I'd just like to say, in response to what Jonathan Gill has said, I'm delighted to hear that many actions and activities and research have been taking place behind the scenes. I'm sorry we've not all known about them. I personally did not know about the forum meeting this coming Monday. I'm delighted to hear now that there will be one. I do hope that we can all be invited, and maybe we can have a report later on, and then we will know, then we can all catch up with what is being done. So yes, so please can we all be invited, and I look forward to coming. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think Jonathan's taken that on board, and an email will go out with regards to coming up on every meeting. I think we did discuss that. The problem is some meetings have got lots of things on there, and this is an important topic that does need to be discussed. So I think so long as we put it on regularly, and I appreciate members may not like the word regularly, but we can always look at it at every meeting and make sure that something's coming up at future meetings that hasn't been discussed. Thank you. Mari?
I'll try and keep mine short. I'm just sort of wondering about the idea of expertise of people coming in to help, because it's all very well as sort of saying we'd like to do this, we'd like to do that. But the idea, if you actually bring people who have expertise to actually do the things we want to achieve as a council, that really is part of what is really, I think, very important.
Thank you. I think, Jonathan, did you want to comment or just accept?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, can't obviously disagree with that. I think maybe some assurance in part, maybe to Councillor Stevenson and others, is that I think I mentioned that we are really embedded, we're front and central in many ways with the Hertfordshire Climate Change and Sustainability Partnership. Now that group itself is drawing on expertise not only from other districts and the county council, the LEP. It also does have there are kind of subs paid in from each of those partners, and we have it's explicitly can be buying in expertise, exactly as Councillor Stevenson is mentioning there, because we recognise that, you know, there's a lot of detailed experience across all of the councils, but sometimes, you know, on these agendas you really need that specialism. So I think in many ways that's probably our primary source, because of course we can buy that in, stretch our contribution with the funding from the other authorities as well. It wouldn't preclude, obviously, East Herts buying in anything as we go along, but that's our primary route, I think. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Members happy with that report and the comments that we have made? Mary, you wanted to come in. You need to unmute yourself, Mary.
Quietly, haven't I? How will the public know how far we've got along with our environmental change issues? Did you hear me?
I heard you, yes.
Yeah.
Jonathan?
Chairman, thank you. Yes, thank you. Yeah, responding to that. Yeah, this is one of the things that we've been slightly grappling with as well. I think the two answers, or the 2 points to that, if you like, are we do see, once we get this forum back up and running as it should have been probably throughout this year, that can be a way to, that is open to interested community groups and indeed individual residents and members, and that can filter through. What we've also working on the sustainability internal working group, we have Michael Hahn, who is our lead for communications in the communications team, and we've just been trying to work with him about how we do get this over in a simple and meaningful way, and we've been you know, you know, we're talking about whether you have kind of RAG status for the different elements, or you have a kind of ongoing barometer of where you're getting towards the 2030 target and such like. What I think would be very useful, if I may, is that we do not have all the answers to how best to get this across. You know, we're talking about social media and all sorts. I think we'll get that from the forum. And what I would suggest, Chairman, if I may, is that when myself and David Thorogood and maybe some other colleagues report to you in a far more detailed way than me giving a verbal update at your meeting in November, should you wish that, I suspect you will, that part of that report, that I kind of consciously invite that discussion from members around the table. We can also obviously feedback what we've found from the forum in the intervening period as well. And I think we can probably have quite a meaningful and detailed debate, which will help take that forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You happy with that, Mary? You're muted again.
I know, I've gone off muted. Yes, people are very anxious and they are very worried, and as well as COVID, it is one of the most frequently mentioned problems, apart from the other political problems that we've got. People are very, very worried, especially where we live with our air quality, etc. So
you've muted yourself, Mary. Or someone's muted you, but you are certainly muted.
yeah, there we are.
You can
well, as soon as we can let people know what we're doing, the better, I think, for everybody concerned.
Chairman, if I could just jump in.
Yeah, please, Lorraine.
Yeah, thank you for that. I would also just mention, from the perspective of getting information out to the public, the issues that the overview and scrutiny have looked at from an annual basis are always included in the annual scrutiny report, and there will be a summary in there which relates to this particular aspect and gives an update of where we are. And I'll be coordinating with Jonathan and David Thorogood on that to get an update, so that when we do publish the annual scrutiny report at some point, I think that might be November, December, once it's been to OS leadership team, etc., then that's another aspect to get the information out into the public arena.
Thank you. And I would say that we have a part to play, which is to get as many people as possible to sign up to the newsletters that we send out, and to check our website, because both of them are extremely important ways of getting the message out to people. And I think our communications are improving massively. So members are happy to note the report. I see no dissent, in which case, if I can move to item 9, and bearing in mind the comments that we've made, one being that we will be asking executive members to attend more regularly so as we can actually ask them about policy. We've got the public scrutiny review that Diane asked for. And I don't know if members would like to ask the Police and Crime Commissioner to attend a meeting so as that he could tell us what he's been getting up to, and we'd be able to ask him questions. Other than that, Lorraine, I'll let you come in, and then I see a couple of hands up.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a little crib sheet here because I always seem to forget what I need to talk about, so excuse me. Yeah, the page 137 is the usual work programme that comes to you every time. Members will notice the change of the format to the work programme. as this actually includes some work that both OS and A&G will consider. An updated version of this was sent to all members on the 9th of September. And these work programmes have been consolidated because it was felt that this would provide a better overall perspective of what's coming forward for consideration by both committees. I do apologise if the formatting looks a bit off in places, but we've had to make sure that such documents are accessibility compliant for our website, and sometimes this throws things out a little bit. In page 3.1 of the report, this provides an update in relation to the review of East Hart's parking policy, which was a report of the Task and Finish Group, which went to the executive on the 11th of February 2020. I just wanted to point out that there's been a substantial loss of income in relation to parking as a result of COVID on the council and its medium-term financial plan. And officers are working regularly with key officers to revisit the parking budget position, but I just wanted to give you a quick update on that. The appendix, which is the actual work programme, as I say, now includes a number of issues, and that was updated and sent round on the 9th of September. So what we actually have in there is the cultural strategy, which is coming in November, performance report quarters 1 and possibly 2, and the revenues and benefits annual report. I know you might think the November meeting is quite going to be quite heavy, but as the chairman mentioned earlier, OS is the Crime and Disorder Committee for the purpose of Section 19 of the Police and Justice Act, and you might want to invite David Lloyd, who is the Police Crime Commissioner, at that meeting. If you don't want to do it at that meeting, we can put that on the looking forward part of the forward plan. Something that members are probably already aware of, the executive has asked that project managers review business cases in relation to a review of its capital projects, given the impact COVID-19 has had on the council's income stream, and reports will follow. And we might get a report to OS in November and December on this, and I'll keep the chairman updated. Lastly, the council is statutorily required to produce an annual scrutiny report. I've been working on this, and this will have to go to various bodies like LT and to us before it will appear, before it ultimately gets presented to council and then publication. And as you mentioned earlier on, Chairman, yes, we've had the draft report from the CFPS. We're awaiting the final report. I've noted Councillor Hollybond's comments about, the draft report. You might have wanted to see the draft report before the final report, but I was guided by what I needed to do. So, as I said, something may be coming on that in November, and that's my summary, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Alex, your hand's up.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So, firstly, with regard to the contents of the work programme, going back to what I said previously about the climate change action plan. So it says here for that, obviously today we've had the update on progress, and it says subsequently that updates will be presented prior to each meeting. The form of that update, can we just please confirm that update will come? Those updates will come in the form of a sort of all of your priorities for action, all the actionable priorities and tasks, and the ones that we can review progress. So it's sort of perhaps the grid, so we can see what's been done, what hasn't been done, and for that to be easy to understand by members, so that we can review which targets have been met and which ones are still to be met, and chase up the latter ones and ask questions on the latter ones if needed. Something that should be provided by email. Just want to clarify that can be done. Secondly, with regard to items for this year that are going to be in the work programme, I think that it would be good for us to look at, I've raised previously at full council, town centres. I know that yes, we received I received a response from the executive member for planning and growth at full council that said that there's all sorts of things, sorts of the forums that we have that are sort of doing various tasks related to promoting our town centres and thinking about things as a council we can do to support our town centres. This is going to be very important, especially given the context of the recovery from COVID. I just want to know really how concrete a lot of these actions that we're doing are in terms of their impacts, and if there's some sort of way that we can review the impact of the work that we're doing and how we're working with partners, including town councils, to deliver on that. So I think that should go in the work programme if possible for this year. Those are my 2 points on the work programme. Yes, and questions to officers on how those 2 things can be incorporated.
Thank you. I'm sure Lorraine has taken them down. I would urge members not to load the agendas too much. The previous one, we did have criticism, quite rightly, that we had far too much to do. And we don't want too many topics, because it means we're not actually giving each topic the time that it deserves. Lorraine, did you want to come back on something else?
I did, Chairman. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Curtis, for your comments. In thinking about the draft report by the Centre for Public Scrutiny, as I said to you earlier on, the very clear thread that came through was that there's a need to be specific about what members want to scrutinise and ask the question, what value can scrutiny add to this before agreeing to spend any time on it? So I think I appreciate what you're saying, Councillor Curtis, but I think what I have to do in this regard is direct you to a scoping document for you to complete, so we can think more. You can maybe sort of think the process through and give some thought as to what specifically you want to achieve. So I'll make sure I send that to you, okay?
Thank you. That would be useful. I think that on balance, just really, I just want to know, with regard to our actions on town centres, what impact they're having, and if there's anything else we can do to support our town centres as a district council. And though I'm sure I can flesh that all out in the scoping document.
I'll send that to you so you can think that one through, Councillor Curtis.
Yeah, thank you very much, both. Do we want to invite the Police and Crime Commissioner to the November meeting to answer our questions? James, you got your hand up. I don't know whether it was to do with the PCC or whether it was something separate.
No, it was Chairman. I think if the option is there, I think it would be a very good idea. I don't know about other colleagues here, but my inbox is definitely full with various things that I think could be a worthwhile discussion. I think with the Police and Crime Commissioner, I think that would be a very good thing to do. But I also wondered if there's a suggestion. I don't know if we are going to be inviting members of the executive. Is there? And I don't even know if it's plausible or not, but if there were maybe a sort of 15-minute section in each of the meetings where we could invite like a rolling program of the executive to come in and just discuss what is going on, just to increase this communication, this level of communication that we've have, because I think that would really help, just getting a bit of an understanding, because we could then help with communication, sort of on from that side as well. So it's just a suggestion that could be there that wouldn't necessarily go on and on and on.
Yeah, no, that's fair comment, and I think we have actually agreed to do that. I believe the leader and the chief executive are coming to the next meeting to discuss the how we dealt with the COVID impact. But I think it's very important that we get the executive members along. It is for us to scrutinise policy, and they're the ones who set the policy. So that is something that will be happening. Lorraine?
Yeah, Chairman, if I can just jump in, as you correctly pointed out, the leader and the chief exec are coming along to the next meeting to talk about the council's response to COVID. Perhaps at that meeting you can decide which executive member you might want to invite to the next on a rolling rotational basis to the meeting after that.
Yeah, thank you. Diane, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Regarding the Police and Crime Commissioner coming along, he may or may not recall that another authority was asked to come along. I think we have to give him a specific topic. because he likes to be prepared before he turns up. And also possibly we may have to offer him 2 dates, because as happened in the past, he said he could come and then he didn't. So we need to pin him down to a definite date that he can put in his diary in advance, otherwise we're wasting our time.
Yeah, that's a fair comment. I did see lots of nodding heads when I asked should we invite him, so I'm taking it that everybody's happy. I think if we ask him to come to the November one, if he can't make that one, then the one afterwards, but let's try and get him in as soon as possible. And I think the topic should be policing in East Hearts. I appreciate there's many strands to that, but he needs to come and answer the questions about policing within East Hearts, and then members may ask specific questions. And to be fair, he may not be able to answer all of them, but we may want to send in some suggestions beforehand if we've got a specific question that's ward specific or town specific, so as he can go away. I think it's a bit unfair to expect someone to be able to answer what's happening in Acacia Avenue. If we did want to do that, we can always email in and get the answers. Lorraine.
Yeah, Chairman, if I can just jump in again. In terms of the topic, I have been trying to get Chief Inspector Orton to give a presentation on knife crime across county lines. And I've been trying to pin him down for months and months and months. And there's been some reluctance on his part to come into the council chamber, or rather he would rather do a presentation in the council chamber rather than a virtual meeting via Zoom. So, I mean, if you're inviting the David Lloyd to the meeting in November, perhaps you might want to consider that subject, and then we could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, if members are happy with that, I think policing in general, because I think every one of us would have ward specific things that we'd like to bring up. Obviously, we can't be too parochial. We've got to widen it out to possibly even town-wise, if not East Hearts-wise. But yeah, I mean, certainly knife crime is something that I think is important. So
okay.
Let's invite him along and see what he says. Alex, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just very quickly, I don't know how many members of the committee are aware of the time East Hearts District Council's representative on the Hertfordshire Police and Crime panel. So I regularly attend meetings with David where we scrutinise David's performance of his role as Police and Crime Commissioner. Now, if members have any questions for David outside of this, you sort of going to have him hopefully in November, but if at any other time members have any questions that they would like to put to the Commissioner, they're more than welcome to email me any questions they have so that I can submit them in writing for him ahead of a Police and Crime panel meeting, so that he's required to provide a response in writing to those questions. Just on top of that, though, I'd say that any questions that are put to David will need to be ones about the strategic level, in terms of how resources are deployed, etc., rather than operational ones. I think operational questions about policing issues, for example, when they're in my ward of Great Hanwell, with drug dealing on the Volley estate, those sort of operational questions are best addressed through the priority setting forums that already exist for each town or village area, which I believe members already get invitations to. We certainly have one for Ware and Stanton Abbott. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly remind members of that for the noting in the minutes as well, please.
Thank you very much for that, and that's a fair comment about the questions. So are members happy to note the overview and scrutiny draft work programme? I see no, I see mine is thumbs up, so I think everyone's happy. Thank you very much.
To agree it, Chairman, rather than just noting it.
Okay, so well, I think everybody was happy because nobody seems to be shaking their head, so I take that as an agreement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 10, urgent items. I haven't been advised of any, Lorraine. No, we haven't got any, in which case the urgent item is we can all go home. So thank you very much. Good evening, members, and I will speak to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chairman. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.